Hello, we're back, and this time we have Deathworld. Deathworld by Harry Harrison. That is a real name, Harry Harrison. He is the writer that wrote the book Soylent Green is based off of. But anyway, bear with me for like a minute and a half, and then we'll get started. All right. Oh, hang on, having a mic problem. It's always something. Can't tell if it's me or if the mic seems a little quieter than usual today. I'm just gonna make sure that Windows didn't reset that, because it does that to me sometimes. Probably just me, but you never know. Oh, we're good. All right, it is very, very hot, so let's get down to it. Deathworld by Harry Harrison. Jason dinAlt sprawled in soft luxury on the couch, a large, frosty stein held limply in one hand. His other hand rested casually on a pillow. The gun behind the pillow was within easy reach of his fingers. In his line of work, he never took chances. It was all highly suspicious. Jason didn't know a soul on this planet, yet the card sent by service tube from the hotel desk had read, Pyrrus would like to see Jason dinAlt. Blunt and to the point. He signaled the desk to send the man up, then lowered his fingers a bit until they brushed the gun butt. The door slid open and his visitor stepped through. A retired wrestler. That was Jason's first thought. Pyrrus was a gray-haired rock of a man, his body seemingly chiseled out of flat slabs of muscle. Then Jason saw the gun strapped to the inside of the other man's forearm, and he let his fingers drop casually behind the pillow. "I'd appreciate it," Jason said, "if you'd take off your gun while you're in here." The other man stopped and scowled down at the gun as if he was seeing it for the first time. "Nope, I never take it off." He seemed mildly annoyed by the suggestion. Jason had his fingers on his own gun when he said, "I'm afraid I'll have to insist. I always feel a little uncomfortable around people who wear guns." He kept talking to distract attention while he pulled out his gun, fast and smooth. He could have been moving in slow motion for all the difference it made. Pyrrus stood rock still while the gun came out, while it swung in his direction. Not until the very last instant did he act. When he did, the motion wasn't visible. First, his gun was in the arm holster, then it was aimed between Jason's eyes. It was an ugly, heavy weapon with a pitted front orifice that showed plenty of use. And Jason knew if he swung his own weapon up a fraction of an inch more, he would be dead. He dropped his arm carefully, and Kirk flipped his own gun back in the holster with the same ease he had drawn it. "Now," the stranger said, "if we're done playing, let's get down to business. I have a proposition for you." Jason downed a large mouthful from the mug and bridled his temper. He was fast with a gun. His life had depended on it more than once, and this was the first time he had been outdrawn. It was the offhand, unimportant manner it had been done with that irritated him. "I'm not prepared to do business," he said acidly. "I've come to Cassilia for a vacation, to get away from work." "Let's not fool each other, dinAlt," Kirk said impatiently. "You've never worked an honest job in your entire life. You're a professional gambler, and that's why I'm here to see you. Jason forced down his anger and threw the gun to the other end of the couch so he wouldn't be tempted to commit suicide. He had hoped no one knew him on Cassilia and was looking forward to a big kill at the casino. He would worry about that later. His weightlifter type seemed to know all the answers. Let him plot the course for a while and see where it led. "All right, what do you want?" Kirk dropped into a chair that creaked ominously under his weight and dug an envelope out of one pocket. He flipped through it quickly and dropped a handful of gleaming galactic exchange notes onto the table. Jason glanced at them, then sat up suddenly. "What are they? Forgeries?" he asked, holding one up to the light. "They're real enough," Kirk told him. "I picked them up at the bank. Exactly 27 bills, or 27 million credits. I want you to use them as a bankroll when you go to the casino tonight. Gamble with them and win." They looked real enough, and they could be checked. Jason fingered them thoughtfully while he examined the other man. "I don't know what you have in mind," he said, "but you realize I can't make any guarantees. I gamble, but I don't always win." "You gamble and you win when you want to," Kirk said grimly. "We looked into that quite carefully before I came to you." "If you mean to say that I cheat..." Carefully, Jason grabbed his temper again and held it down. There was no future in getting annoyed. Kirk continued in the same level voice, ignoring Jason's growing anger. "Maybe you don't call it cheating. Frankly, I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, you could have your suit lined with aces and electromagnets in your boots, as long as you won. I'm not here to discuss moral points with you. I said I had a proposition. We've worked hard for that money, but it still isn't enough. To be precise, we need 3 billion credits. The only way to get that sum is by gambling, with these 27 million as bankroll." "And what do I get out of it?" Jason asked the question coolly, as if any bit of the fantastic proposition made sense. "Everything above the 3 billion you could keep. That should be fair enough. You're not risking your own money, but you stand to make enough to keep you for life if you win. And if I lose?" Kirk thought for a moment, not liking the taste of the idea. "Yes, there is the chance you might lose. I hadn't thought about that." He reached a decision. "If you lose, well, I suppose that is just a risk we will have to take. Though I think I would kill you then. The ones who died to get the 27 million deserve at least that." He said it quietly, without malice, and it was more of a promise than a threat. Stamping to his feet, Jason refilled his stein and offered one to Kirk, who took it with a nod of thanks. He paced back and forth, unable to sit. The whole proposition made him angry, yet at the same time had a fatal fascination. It was a gambler, and this talk was like the taste of drugs to an addict. Stopping suddenly, he realized that his mind had been made up for some time. Win or lose, live or die, how could he say no to the chance to gamble with money like that? He turned suddenly and jabbed his finger at the big man in the chair. "Stolen money? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll do it. You probably knew that I would from the time you came in here. There are some terms of my own, though. I want to know who you are and who they are you keep talking about. And where did the money come from? Is it stolen?" Kirk drained his own stein and pushed it away from him. "Stolen money? No, quite the opposite. 2 years' work mining and refining ore to get it. It was mined on Pyrrus and sold here on Cassilia. You can check on that very easily. I sold it. I'm the Pyrrhic ambassador to this planet." He smiled at the thought. "Not that that means much. I'm ambassador to at least 6 other planets as well. Comes in handy when you want to do business." Jason looked at the muscular man with his gray hair and worn military-cut clothes and decided not to laugh. You heard of strange things out in the frontier planets, and every word could be true. He had never heard of Pyrrus either, though that didn't mean anything. There were over 30,000 known planets in the inhabited universe. I'll check on what you've told me, Jason said. If it's true, we can do business. Call me tomorrow. No, said Kirk. The money has to be won tonight. I've already issued a check for this 27 million. It will bounce as high as the Pleiades unless we deposit the money in the morning, so that's our time limit. With each moment, the whole affair became more fantastic and more intriguing for Jason. He looked at his watch. There was still enough time to find out if Kirk was lying or not. All right, we'll do it tonight, he said. Only I'll have to have one of those bills to check. Kirk stood up to go. Take them all. I won't be seeing you again until after you've won. I'll be at the casino, of course, but don't recognize me. It would be much better if they didn't know where your money was coming from, or how much you had. Then he was gone, after a bone-crushing hand clasp that closed on Jason's hand like vice jaws. Jason was alone with the money. Fanning the bills out like a hand of cards, he stared at their sepia and gold faces, trying to get the reality through his head. 27 million credits. What was to stop him from just walking out the door with them and vanishing? Nothing, really, except his own sense of honor. Kirk Pyrrus, the man with the same last name as the planet he was from, was the universe's biggest fool. Or he knew just what he was doing. From the way the interview had gone, the latter seemed the better bet. He knows I would much rather gamble with the money than steal it, he said wryly. Slipping a small gun into his waistband holster and pocketing the money, he went out. All right, we have a break here before part 2. Let me get some water. Oh my god, it is so humid today. All right, let's get back to it. Part 2. The robot teller at the bank just pinged with electronic shock when he presented one of the bills and flashed a panel that directed him to see Vice President Wayne. Wayne was a smooth customer who bugged his eyes and lost some of his tan when he saw the sheaf of bills. You wish to deposit these with us? He asked, while his fingers unconsciously stroked them. Not today, Jason said. They were paid to me as a debt. Would you please check that they are authentic and change them? I'd like 500,000 credit notes. Both of his inner chest pockets were packed tight when he left the bank. The bills were good, and he felt like a walking mint. This was the first time in his entire life that carrying a large sum of money made him uncomfortable. Waving to a passing helicab, he went directly to the casino, where he knew he would be safe for a while. Cassilia Casino was the play spot of the nearby cluster of star systems. It was the first time Jason had seen it, though he knew its type well. He had spent most of his adult life in casinos like this on other worlds. The decor differed, but they were always the same. Gambling and socialites in public, and behind the scenes all the private vice you could afford. Theoretically, no-limit games, but that was true only up to a certain point. When the house was really hurt, the honest games stopped being square, and the big winner had to watch his step very carefully. These were the odds Jason dinAlt had played against countless times before. He was wary, but not very concerned. The dining room was almost empty, and the major domo quickly rushed to the side of the relaxed stranger in the richly cut clothes. Jason was lean and dark, looking more like the bored scion of some rich family than a professional gambler. This appearance was important, and he cultivated it. The cuisine looked good, and the cellar turned out to be wonderful. He had a professional talk with the sommelier while waiting for the soup, then settled down to enjoy his meal. He ate leisurely, and the large dining room was filled before he was through. Watching the entertainment over a long cigar killed some more time. When he finally went to the gaming rooms, they were filled and active. Moving slowly around the room, he dropped a few thousand credits. He scarcely noticed how he played, giving more attention to the feel of the games. The play all seemed honest and none of the equipment was rigged, but that could be changed very quickly, he realized. Usually it wasn't necessary. House percentage was enough to assure a profit. Once he saw Kirk out of the corner of his eye, but he paid him no attention. The ambassador was losing small sums steadily at 7 and silver and seemed to be impatient, probably waiting for Jason to begin playing seriously. He smiled and strolled on slowly. Jason settled on the dice table as he usually did. It was the surest way to make small winnings. And if I feel it tonight, I can clean this casino out. That was his secret, the power that won for him steadily, and every once in a while enabled him to make a killing and move on quickly before the hired thugs came to get the money back. The dice reached him, and he threw an 8 the hard way. Betting was light, and he didn't push himself, just kept away from the 7s. He made the point and passed a natural. Then he crapped out, and the dice moved on. Sitting there, making small, automatic bets while the dice went around the table, he thought about the power. Funny, after all the years of work, we still don't know much about Sci. They can train people a bit and improve skills a bit, but that's all. He was feeling strong tonight. He knew that the money in his pocket gave him the extra lift that sometimes helped him break through. With his eyes half closed, he picked up the dice and let his mind gently caress the pattern of sunken dots. They shot out of his hand, and he stared at a 7. It was there, stronger than he had felt it in years. The stiff weight of those 1,000,000 credit notes had done it. The world all around was sharp cut clear, and the dice were completely in his control. He knew to the 10th credit how much the other players had in their wallets, and was aware of the cards in the hands of the players behind him. Slowly, carefully, he built up the stakes. There was no effort to the dice. They rolled and sat up like trained dogs. Jason took his time and concentrated on the psychology of the players and the stickman. It took almost 2 hours to build his money on the table to 700,000 credits. Then he caught the stickman signaling that they had a heavy winner. He waited until the hard-eyed man strolled over to watch the game. Then he smiled happily, bet all his table stakes, and blew it on one roll of the dice. The houseman smiled happily. The stickman relaxed, and out of the corner of his eye, Jason saw Kirk turning a dark purple. Sweating, pale, his hand trembling ever so slightly, Jason opened the front of his jacket and pulled out one of the envelopes of new bills. Breaking the seal with his finger, he dropped 2 of them on the table. "Could we have a no-limit game?" he asked. "I'd like to win back some of my money." The stickman had trouble controlling his smile now. He glanced across at the houseman, who nodded a quick yes. They had a sucker, and they meant to clean him. He had been playing from his wallet all evening. Now he was cracking into a sealed envelope to try for what he had lost. A thick envelope, too, and probably not his money. Not that the house cared in the least. To them, money had no loyalties. The play went on with the casino in a very relaxed mood, which was just the way Jason wanted it. He needed to get as deep into them as he could before someone realized they might be on the losing end. The rough stuff would start, and he wanted to put it off as long as possible. It would be hard to win smoothly then, and his Psi power might go as quickly as it had come. That had happened before. He was playing against the house now. The 2 other players were obvious shills, and a crowd had jammed solidly around to watch. After losing and winning a bit, he hit a streak of naturals, and his pile of gold chips tottered higher and higher. There was nearly 1 billion there, he estimated roughly. The dice were still falling true, though he was soaked with sweat from the effort. Betting the entire stack of chips, he reached for the dice. The stickman reached faster and hooked them away. "House calls for new dice," he said flatly. Jason straightened up and wiped his hands, glad of the instant's relief. This was the 3rd time the house had changed dice to try and break his winning streak. It was their privilege. The hard-eyed casino man opened his wallet, as he had done before, and drew out a pair at random. Stripping off their plastic cover, he threw them the length of the table to Jason. They came up a natural 7, and Jason smiled. When he scooped them up, the smile slowly faded. The dice were transparent, finely made, evenly weighted on all sides, and crooked. The pigment on the dots of 5 sides of each die was some heavy metal compound, probably lead. The 6th side was a ferrous compound. They would roll true unless they hit a magnetic field. That meant the entire surface of the table could be magnetized. He could have never spotted the difference if he hadn't looked at the dice with his mind. But what could he do about it? Shaking them slowly, he glanced quickly around the table. There was what he needed, an ashtray with a magnet in its base to hold it to the metal edge of the table. Jason stopped shaking the dice and looked at them quizzically, then reached over and grabbed the ashtray. He dropped the base against his hand. As he lifted the ashtray, there was a concerted gasp from all sides. The dice were sticking there, upside down, boxcars showing. "Are these what you call honest dice?" he asked. The man who had thrown out the dice reached quickly for his hip pocket. Jason was the only one who saw what happened next. He was watching that hand closely, his own fingers near his own gun butt. As the man dived into his pocket, a hand reached out of the crowd behind him. From its square-cut size, it could have belonged to only one person. The thick thumb and index finger clamped swiftly around the houseman's wrist, then they were gone. The man screamed shrilly and held up his arm, his hand dangling limp as a glove from the broken wrist bones. With his flank well protected, Jason could go on with the game. "The old dice, if you don't mind," he said quietly. Dazedly, the stick man pushed them over. Jason shook quickly and rolled. Before he hit the table, he could tell... Oh, I just lost my spot, sorry. Before he hit the table, he realized he couldn't control them. The transient psi power had gone. End over end they turned and faced up 7. Counting the chips as they were pushed over to him, he added up a bit under 2 billion credits. They would be winning that much if he left the game now, but it wasn't the 3 billion that Kirk needed. Well, it would have to be enough. As he reached for the chips, he caught Kirk's eye across the table, and the other man shook his head in a steady no. "Let it ride," Jason said wearily. "One more roll." He breathed on the dice, polished them on his cuff, and wondered how he had ever gotten into this spot. Billions riding on a pair of dice. That was as much as the annual income of some planets. The only reason there could be stakes like that was because the planetary government had a stake in the casino. He shook as long as he could, reaching for the control that wasn't there. Then, let fly. Everything else had stopped in the casino, and people were standing on tables and chairs to watch. There wasn't a sound from that large crowd. The dice bounced back from the board with a clatter loud in the silence and tumbled over the cloth. A 5 and a 1. 6. He still had to make his point. Scooping up the dice, Jason talked to them, mumbled the ancient oaths that brought luck, and threw again. It took 5 throws before he made the 6. The crowd echoed his sigh, and their voices rose quickly. He wanted to stop, take a deep breath, but he knew he couldn't. Winning the money was only part of the job. They now had to get away with it. It had to look casual. A waiter was passing with a tray of drinks. Jason stopped him and tucked a 100-credit note into his pocket. "Drinks are on me," he shouted, while he pried the tray out of the waiter's hands. Well-wishers cleared the glasses away quickly, and Jason piled the chips onto the tray. They more than loaded it, but Kirk appeared that moment with a second tray. "I'll be glad to help you, sir, if you will permit me." Jason looked at him and laughed his permission. It was the first time he had a clear look at Kirk in the casino. He was wearing loose, purple evening pajamas over what must have been a false stomach. The sleeves were long and baggy, so he looked fat rather than muscular. It was a simple but effective disguise. Carefully carrying the loaded trays, surrounded by a crowd of excited patrons, they made their way to the cashier's window. The manager himself was there, wearing a sickly grin. Even the grin faded when he counted the chips. "Could you come back in the morning?" he said. "I'm afraid we don't have that kind of money on hand." "What's the matter?" Kirk shouted, "trying to get out of paying him? You took my money easy enough when I lost. It works both ways." The onlookers, always happy to see the house lose, growled their disagreement. Jason finished the matter in a loud voice. "I'll be reasonable. Give me what cash you have, and I'll take a check for the balance." There was no way out. Under the watchful eye of the gleeful crowd, the manager packed an envelope with bills and wrote a check. Jason took a quick glimpse at it, then stuffed it into an inside pocket. With the envelope under one arm, he followed Kirk towards the door. Because of the onlookers, there was no trouble in the main room, but just as they reached the side entrance, two men moved in, blocking the way. "Just a moment," one said. He never finished the sentence. Kirk walked into them without slowing, and they bounced away like 10-pins. Then Kirk and Jason were out of the building and walking fast. "Into the parking lot," Kirk said. "I have a car there." When they rounded the corner, there was a car bearing down on them. Before Jason could get his gun clear of the holster, Kirk was in front of him. His arm came up, and his big, ugly gun burst through the cloth of his sleeve and jumped into his hand. A single shot killed the driver, and the car swerved and crashed. The other two men in the car died coming out of the door, their guns dropping from their hands. After that, they had no trouble. Kirk drove away at top speed from the casino, the torn sleeve of his pajamas whipping in the breeze, giving glimpses of the big gun back in the holster. "When you get the chance," Jason said, "you'll have to show me how that trick holster works." "When we get the chance," Kirk answered, as he dived the car into the city access tube. That's the end of part 2. Let me read on. I've read on a part of 3, and I think we should be okay. Yeah, let's keep going. Let me read first. Drink first. All right, part 3. The building they stopped at was one of the finer residences in Cassilia. As they had driven, Jason counted the money and separated his share. Almost 16 million credits. It still didn't seem quite real. When they got out in front of the building, he gave Kirk the rest. "Here's your 3 billion. Don't think it was easy," he said. "It could have been worse," was his only answer. The recorded voice scratched in the speaker over the door. "Sire Ellis has retired for the night. Would you please call again in the morning? All appointments are made in advance." The voice broke off as Kirk pushed the door open. He did it almost effortlessly with the flat of his hand. As they went in, Jason looked at the remnants of torn and twisted metal that hung in the lock and wondered again about his companion. Strength, more than physical strength. He's like an elemental force. I have the feeling that nothing can stop him. Made him angry, and at the same time, it fascinated him. He didn't want out of the deal until he found out more about Kirk and his planet, and they who had died for the money he gambled. Sire Ellis was old, balding, and angry, not at all used to having his rest disturbed. His complaint stopped suddenly when Kirk threw the money down on the table. "Is the ship being loaded yet, Ellis? Here's the balance due." Ellis only fumbled the bills for a moment before he could answer Kirk's question. "The ship, but of course. We began loading when you gave us the deposit. You'll have to excuse my confusion. This is all a little irregular. We never handle transactions of this size in cash." "That's the way I like to do business," Kirk answered him. "I've canceled the deposit. This is the total sum. Now, how about a receipt?" Ellis had made out the receipt before his senses returned. He held it tightly while he looked uncomfortably at the 3 billion spread out before him. "Wait, I can't take it now. You'll have to return in the morning to the bank in normal business fashion," Ellis decided firmly. Kirk reached over and gently drew the paper out of Ellis's hand. "Thanks for the receipt," he said. I won't be here in the morning, so this will be satisfactory. And if you're worried about the money, I suggest you get in touch with some of your plant guards or private police. You'll feel a lot safer. When they left through the shattered door, Ellis was frantically dialing numbers on his screen. Kirk answered Jason's next question before he could ask it. I imagine you would like to live to spend that money in your pocket, so I've booked 2 seats on an interplanetary ship. He glanced at the car clock. It leaves in about 2 hours, so we have plenty of time. I'm hungry. Let's find a restaurant. I hope you have nothing at the hotel worth going back for. It would be a little difficult. Nothing worth getting killed for, Jason said. Now, where can we go to eat? There are a few questions I'd like to ask you. They circled carefully down to the transport levels until they were sure they hadn't been followed. Kirk nosed the car into a darkened loading dock where they abandoned it. We can always get another car, he said, and they probably have this one spotted. Let's walk back to the freightway. I saw a restaurant there as we came by. Dark and looming shapes of overland freight carriers filled the parking lot. They picked their way around the man-high wheels and into the hot and noisy restaurant. The drivers and early morning workers took no notice of them as they found a booth in the back and dialed a meal. Kirk chiseled a chunk of meat off the slab in front of him and popped it cheerfully into his mouth. Ask your questions, he said. I'm feeling much better already. What's in this ship you arranged for tonight? What kind of a cargo was I risking my neck for? I thought you were risking your neck for money, Kirk said dryly. But be assured it was in a good cause. The cargo means the survival of a world. Guns, ammunition, mines, explosives, and such. Jason choked over a mouthful of food. Gun running? What are you doing financing a private war? And how can you talk about survival with a lethal cargo like that? Don't try and tell me they have a peaceful use. Who are you killing? Most of the big man's humor had vanished. He had that grim look Jason knew well. Yes, peaceful would be the right word, because that is basically all we want, just to live in peace. And it is not who we are killing, it is what we are killing. Jason pushed his plate away with an angry gesture. You're talking in riddles, he said. What you say has no meaning. It has meaning enough, Kirk told him, but only on one planet in the universe. And just how much do you know about Pyrrus? Absolutely nothing. For a moment, Kirk sat wrapped in memory, scowling distantly. Then he went on. Mankind doesn't belong on Pyrrus. It has been there for almost 300 years now. The age expectancy of my people is 16 years. Of course, most adults live beyond that, but the high child mortality brings the average down. It is everything that a humanoid world should not be. The gravity is nearly twice Earth normal. The temperature can vary daily from Arctic to tropic. The climate, well, you have to experience it to believe it, like nothing you've seen anywhere else in the galaxy. I'm frightened, Jason said dryly. What do you have, methane or chlorine reactions? I've been down on planets like that. Kirk slammed his hand down hard on the table. The dishes bounced and the table legs creaked. Laboratory reactions, he growled. They look great on a bench, but what happens when you have a world filled with those compounds? In an eye wink of galactic time, all the violence is locked up in nice, stable compounds. The atmosphere may be poisonous for an oxygen breather, but taken by itself, it's as harmless as weak beer. There is only one setup that is pure poison as a planetary atmosphere. Plenty of H2O, the most universal solvent you can find, plus free oxygen to work on. Water and oxygen, Jason broke in. You mean Earth or a planet like Cassilia here? That's preposterous. Not at all. Because you were born in this kind of environment, you accept it as right and natural. You take it for granted that metals corrode, coastlines change, and storms interfere with communication. These are all normal occurrences on oxygen water worlds. On Pyrrus, These conditions are carried to the nth degree. The planet has an axial tilt of almost 42 degrees, so there is a tremendous change in temperature from season to season. This is one of the prime causes of a constantly changing ice cap. The weather generated by this is spectacular, to say the least. If that's all, Jason said, I don't see why. That's not all. It's barely the beginning. The open seas perform the dual destructive function of supplying water vapor to keep the weather going and building up gigantic tides. Pyrrus's 2 satellites, Samos and Bessos, combine at times to pull the oceans up into 30-meter tides. And until you've seen one of these tides lap over into an active volcano, you've seen nothing. Heavy elements are what brought us to Pyrrus, and these same elements keep the planet at a volcanic boil. There have been at least 13 supernovas in the immediate stellar neighborhood. Heavy elements can be found on most of their planets, of course, as well as completely unbreathable atmospheres. Long-term mining and exploitation can't be done by anything but a self-sustaining colony, which meant Pyrrus, where the radioactive elements are locked in the planetary core, surrounded by a shell of lighter ones. While this allows for the atmosphere men need, it also provides unceasing volcanic activity as the molten plasma forces its way to the surface. For the first time, Jason was silent, trying to imagine what life could be like on a planet constantly at war with itself. Oh, I've saved the best for last, Kirk said with grim humor. Now that you have an idea of what the environment is like, think of the kind of life forms that would populate it. I doubt if there is one off-world species that would live a minute. Plants and animals on Pyrrus are tough. They fight the world and they fight each other. Hundreds of thousands of years of genetic weeding out have produced things that would give even an electronic brain nightmares. Armor-plated, poisonous, claw-tipped and fanged mouth that describes everything that walks, flaps, or just sits and grows. Ever see a plant with teeth? Teeth that bite? I don't think you want to. You'd have to be on Pyrrus, and that means you would be dead within seconds of leaving the ship. Even I'll have to take a refresher course before I'll be able to go outside the landing buildings. The unending war for survival keeps the life forms competing and changing. Death is simple, but the ways of dealing it too numerous to list. Unhappiness rode like a weight on Kirk's broad shoulders. After long moments of thought, he moved visibly to shake it off. Returning his attention to his food and mopping the gravy from his plate, he voiced part of his feelings. I suppose there's no logical reason why we should stay and fight this endless war, except that Pyrrus is our home. The last piece of gravy-soaked bread vanished, and he waved the empty fork at Jason. Be happy you're an off-worlder, and we'll never have to see it. That's where you're wrong, Jason said, as calmly as he could. You see, I'm going back with you. I think we'll stop there for now. The end of part 3, and leaves us with a good cliffhanger ending. And then we can get down to part 4. Also, I am very, very warm, so I would really love to take a long break. Normally, I'd read more because part 4 isn't that much longer. But oh my god, I'm sweltering, so we're going to stop for now. I'll read again soon, though. I'm enjoying this story so far. As always, thanks for listening in, and feel free to send me an email if you have any recommendations or comments. Same username at gmail.com. And thanks as always to Aindulmedir. You can find him on YouTube, Spotify, or Bandcamp. Go show him some love. He's a nice guy. Yeah, thanks for hanging. I hope you're enjoying Deathworld so far. I've gotten a fun idea for a secondary stream during the weeks. I'll post about it later, but basically I have found a number of volumes of weird tales and astounding stories of science fiction and various versions of those kinds of pulp magazines left over on Project Gutenberg. And I was thinking maybe it would be fun once a week to flip through a story or two from those magazines. I don't know, Wild Tales Wednesdays or something like that. I'll think about it. Maybe start next week. We'll see. But anyway, thanks for hanging, and I'll catch you folks next time. Take it easy.